state of emergency has been declared in the Republic of Khakassia due to a powerful hurricane and large-scale forest fires. However, the destruction caused by the natural disaster is incomparable to the damage inflicted by Russian occupiers in Khakassia. 11 people were injured by the hurricane, and several roofs were blown off. And Moscow has destroyed thousands of locals and forced thousands more to live in impoverished, lawless ghettos.
For 2 years, we were just sitting here. It was completely silent.
Was it difficult?
Yeah. Out of 3,500 people, we have about 1,500 left.
Khakassia, like its neighbors Kuzbas, Altai, Tuva, and Zabaikalsky Krai, is one of the poorest regions of the pseudo-empire. Poverty here permeates literally everything. Poverty in Khakassia is not a vice, it's a terrifying reality.
600 rubles per kilogram of meat?
Ha! Good evening, in real life. Hello.
Despite the fact that the Republic is rich in natural resources, including gold, 25% of the population lives below the poverty line. Every fourth person is undernourished. The fact is that large industrial enterprises are in the hands of federal or private companies, whose profits leave the Republic for Moscow, or go directly to cocaine and yachts of Putin's oligarchs. This is an example of classic colonial policy from the 19th century. This is how empires exploited the subjugated natives. However, the civilized world has moved forward for more than 100 years and has abandoned this shameful practice. But the Russian pseudo-empire still continues to terrorize peoples, just as it did 200 years ago.
Well, probably until the mid-18th century, when this territory became part of Russia. Here, Russia maintained a place for self-governance. These were the steppe councils, which existed in this form until the revolution. The horrifying brutality of the Red Terror and the Great Patriotic War led to our people now experiencing all the wonders of modernization.
Within Russia, there will be no Hadron Collider or Silicon Valley in Khakassia. Within Russia, Khakassia faces a heroin epidemic and Lada Kalinas in exchange for children lost in the Imperial War.
And unknown synthetics. Hospitals are literally overflowing with addicts, and many have already died. The drug plague has reached Siberia as well.
Moscow has built a narrowly focused raw material economy in Khakassia, which is based on coal and aluminum extraction. Any decrease in demand for these resources leads to disaster, a sharp decline in citizens' incomes, and job cuts. This is exactly what is happening now, amid the crisis in the coal industry.
And on to other topics. Khakassia is among the 9 regions in the country where the authorities have failed to combat poverty among the population. Vice Prime Minister Tatyana Golikova has voiced criticism. However, in Khakassia, they have not been able to reduce the number of people with incomes below the subsistence level. The situation is quite the opposite when it comes to the salary of the head of the Republic. A raise twice a year, for example.
While in large cities one can somehow manage to survive, in small towns and villages it's a domestic and social catastrophe.
This working settlement, which stands on the edge of a huge iron ore quarry, is well hidden from the eyes of casual visitors. Few people end up here just passing through. There are no tourist trails or bright attractions here, but people live here. We are in the west of the Republic of Khakassia, among the mountains and taiga, in a place called Veshinatyoya.
People are fleeing from here in large numbers as if from a disaster zone, because even those who have jobs just barely earn a living wage. Teachers, medical workers, and social workers are on a terrible genocidal diet.
For the 3rd time this year, at the beginning of March, the governor of Khakassia signed another decree to reduce the living wage.
Moscow is not involved in the development of the Republic at all. There are no proper roads there. Many villages are simply cut off from civilization. Internet and mobile communication work intermittently. And as for gasification, it's not even worth mentioning. That's something out of the realm of fantasy.
Due to new forestry regulations, villagers cannot gather firewood as they used to. However, foresters have already stopped allocating plots. What this has turned into for the village residents and what lies ahead will be explained by Natalia Garmashova.
The woodpile for the winter is ready, but the firewood in it is far from first-rate. Rotten wood, he gathered from fallen branches. Good quality wood is too expensive.
The Khakas will either be free or they will disappear. For several centuries, Moscow has been conducting a planned genocide of the local population. Currently, Russians make up more than 80% of the Republic, while the indigenous people are only 12%. 90% speak Russian.
You need to know a set of lexical tools, at least to sing ditties to the guests. Water of the Chaizerga family, Samovar Kainapcha. There is such a song, a folk, children's one.
And if you had chance to study Khakas language, would you learn it?
I tried, honestly, but there's not enough time, not enough practice. But with my colleagues, representatives of the titular ethnic group of Khakassia, I sometimes communicate in Khakas. Well, at least I greet or say goodbye. But it's more like a joke, not serious communication.
Muscovy occupied Khakassia in the 17th, 18th centuries. The Russians behaved like true invaders. They actively suppressed local uprisings, destroyed their traditional way of life, and forcibly converted them to orthodoxy. Very cohesive.
They corrupted the children, and you shoved the first piece into them. Now check yourself. They sat down at the table. Let's say the grandmother cooked borscht. At the table sits her daughter and her husband. The son-in-law, that is, of the grandmother who cooked the borscht. And the children are sitting at the table. The first bowl is being served. To whom does the grandmother serve the first bowl? If to the children, then she is a criminal. If to the daughter, then she is twice a criminal.
In the 17th and 18th centuries, there were several uprisings in Khakassia, but they were drowned in blood. Moscow acted according to its terrorist template. Russification affected not only religion, but also the language, culture, and everyday life of the local peoples. By the mid-18th century, the Russian language became the official language in the region, and the Khakas language and culture began to disappear under the pressure of the new authority.
It is no coincidence that a new exhibition dedicated to Pushkin and Tolstoy has opened at the Khakas Regional Museum titled The Golden Branch of Russian Literature, Pushkin and Tolstoy. It was launched as part of the large-scale project Russian Language and Literature, Cultural Heritage of the Peoples of Russia.
As a result of famines, forced relocations, and outright destruction, the population of the Khakas and other indigenous peoples, significantly decreased. Ultimately, the local population found themselves in the position of a minority on their own land. The Russian world has triumphed, and the imperialists are very proud of it. They love to tell how they brought civilization, culture, and taught the locals to read and write in the conquered lands. But we all see the result of the so-called Russian civilization: devastation, hatred, poverty, and total depression.
The activities of the 7th Convocation of the Supreme Council end as they began. There is still no money in Khakassia. The crisis is felt especially acutely by the municipalities. At the beginning of the year, Abakan lost half of its income. In the districts, the situation is even worse. The problem is that now personal income taxes go to the Republican budget, and from there they are distributed among the territories based on loyalty.
After the collapse of the Union, Khakassia had a chance to become free. Amid the rise of national consciousness in 1991, Khakassia declared its state independence. This was a consolidated decision by the regional authorities and local residents. Activists and politicians began raising issues about preserving Khakassian culture and language, as well as demanding more rights in managing their own land. But unfortunately, the Kremlin authorities did not want to let go of their colony. The Declaration of Independence was not recognized, and Khakassia remained party of the quasi-empire.
I will tell you, I travel a lot around the country, and we participate in elections in many places. but I haven't encountered such backwardness as yours in a long time. That is to say, it's just as I wrote on social media with yesterday, a bunch of extremely frightened idiots.
Despite the unstable situation in the 90s, the Khakassians were unable to achieve real sovereignty because by that time the indigenous population was already a minority. Centuries of Russification had borne their fruits. There were more vatniks than indigenous people. Therefore, not everyone supported the ideas of independence.
What the heck is going on?
So far, Khakassia has not become a center of separatism or mass opposition to the Russian state. But discontent is growing every year. The majority of Khakassians, like other ethnic minorities in Russia, are forced to operate underground, under conditions of political repression. Open support for Ukraine and the national liberation struggle is extremely limited. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Even people in the hinterlands, the Russian common man, are slowly starting to realize that Putin's system and Putin's war are not needed by anyone. They see that Russia is dying out. It is really dying out.
Yes.
It is really dying out. And people are starting to understand this. I think that by the time we seriously enter Russia, the decline in the combat capability of the Russian army will coincide with the growth of our combat capabilities. And most importantly, what you are doing, yes, what we are trying to do, is to show the people of Russia that there is another path for them.
Protest sentiments in Khakassia are not limited to whispers in the kitchen. The Siberian Republic is the only Russian region where there was a real electoral battle for the governor's seat. In 2018, something incredible happened. The winner was not a representative of Putin's united Russia, but a candidate chosen by the people. The new governor criticized officials, but did not touch the pale dictator. Apparently that's why he wasn't immediately thrown into a pit. In any case, it was an unpleasant wake-up call for the Kremlin, and in Khakassia, the screws were tightened even more. The elected governor himself is now fully systemic and supports the so-called special military operation. This means that it's time for the people of Khakassia to appoint a new leader, because support for the criminal war among the population is very low. The work of the Ukrainian Defense Forces also contributes to this. The authorities in Khakassia stopped publishing obituaries of terrorists killed in the war 2 years ago. Most likely, the numbers seriously frightened them.
The number of losses and the number of wounded are not reported. Relatives cannot get an answer about where their loved ones are. The guys who returned to the base say they came out of hell. Almost everyone is concussed.
The prolonged war and Ukraine's heroic struggle provide a historic chance for all the subjugated peoples of the pseudo-empire to gain independence and realize their right to a normal life. Without the colonial Kremlin parasite.
We live with this coal. We live on it. We breathe this dust. You poison us by extracting coal and sell it to our own citizens 10 times more expensive. Are you out of your mind, guys? What are you doing there? Have you really gone mad? You think we're fools here or something? Or do you want the regions to start separating from you? Yes, you are leading everything to this. I have the feeling that you guys should have been taking pills and staying in a mental hospital for a long time, but not making laws. And it's not just me saying and thinking this, everyone thinks so.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.